Good morning, everybody. I am Brett L. Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, it's been a few weeks. Hope all is well. I know the game didn't go the way you would have liked, but how was the experience going to be able to see your beloved Dallas Cowboys last week in Texas?
Well, the outcome was about what we expected based on what we've seen from the Cowboys recently, especially with Dak out. But the stadium was absolutely unreal. I ended up buying, it was a raffle, and you think it's like, hey, you put your name down, put a dollar amount down, and see if you win later. They're like, no, the amount that's on it is what you buy it for. So I bought a Club 88. So it's got Des Bryant, Michael Irvin, and Drew Pearson and CeeDee Lamb on it, and they all have an autograph. I was like, dude, that's awesome, man. That alone made it worth the trip. So we had a great time, man. It's so much fun up there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've been to one game in the last 20 years. It was this year when I was at SoFi watching the Chargers. So it was nice to get back and see an NFL game live. I'm sure you had a great day.
Yeah,
let's get right into this. If you guys got your start sit questions, please post them with a PPR or non-PPR designation. I've been on this morning since 7. Coach got on a little bit later, but we've already answered some questions in the chat prior to the show getting started. So let's get right to it this morning. Let's get into the games first. As soon as you guys start posting questions in between each question, in between each game, we'll get to as many of your questions as possible. We will not leave until we answer all your questions. However, we do have a hard show must end at 12:30 Eastern time, as Coach is going to do some bar hopping and watching games today. So we got to let Coach scratch that itch. But let's get right into it. Game 1, Las Vegas Raiders 2-7 at the Miami Dolphins 3-6. My pick, I like Miami not bouncing back, but coming off that big win last week on the road. I like Miami 24, Las Vegas 14. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I got Dolphins 27, Raiders 17. I like Miami as well.
All right, so we're not too far off. Let's get right into the start and sit. First for the Las Vegas Raiders. They're 26th in scoring, 32nd in rushing, and 18th in passing. Coach, who are we starting, if anyone other than Brock Bowers?
Yeah, it's a tough offense, man. I mean, Gardner Minshew's QB 27 ranked this week from consensus, QB 38 fantasy points per game on the season. I'd rather if I'm in super flex leagues, I'd rather put a skill position player in the quarterback spot than play Gardner Minshew, to be honest. So he's out. Alexander Mattison, this is where you attack Miami. They give up the 7th most fantasy points per game to running backs. He's RB 33 in fantasy points per game with limited work. Obviously, it's all come over the last few games, but scored less than 5 PPR points in the last 2 games, a total of 23 carries for 51 yards. So I'm sitting Alexander Mattison this week. Wide receiver room, Jacoby Myers. He's the only other guy from a pass catching perspective. Obviously, I like the talent in him. He's wide receiver 14 since week 3. Consensus rankings has him at wide receiver 27. I don't mind him as a deeper wide receiver 3 flex play, depending on your roster. And then, of course, Brock Bowers. We know he's a start, so you're starting him no matter what the matchup says. So Brock Bowers for me. Anything you would change there, Coach?
No, I like it. To me, it's just all Bowers. I mean, what he's done so far in his rookie year, everyone called him a generational type player. It's nice to see when you get a guy get that type of designation for him actually to live up to those hypes. So he's obviously been someone you've got to be pretty excited about if you got him in your rookie drafts or startup drafts or even in redraft. But let's move on to the other side of the ball with the Miami offense. They're 30th in scoring, 9th in rushing, 25th in passing. Quarterback room, we've got Tua. Tua is yet to have a top 8 weekly finish. He has 1 quarterback finish, and it was in week 1. Raiders have allowed the 8th most success rate on per dropback, 10th highest passing rate, and 10th passing touchdowns. So I like Tua this week as a super flex start. Running back room, running back 6 on the week, Devon Achane. He's a must start for me. I'm not starting Mostert. Obviously, if you have Tyreek Hill, especially in redraft, you draft him really high. So you haven't been very happy with him being wide receiver 38 off in a year. But against the Raiders, I like him this week. Wide receiver 33 is Jalen Waddle on the week. For me, he is at best a flex start. And then moving on to your tight end room, Jonnu Smith. He's a start. Tight end 24 of the last 3 games. Faces the defense that has allowed the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends and the 6th most receiving yards per game to tight ends. So I like Jonnu Smith this week. Anything you would change on that, Coach?
No, I'm with you, man. It was tough for me. I got John Smith in one of my big money leagues, and I ended up because of roster, I had to drop him. It's a very small roster, and I picked up Dawson Knox this week, and I'm regretting it already because someone jumped on John Smith right away, right after I did it. But yeah, I like John Smith this week as well. I agree with all your starts there.
Okay, let's get to our questions that we have up so far. Again, if you have questions, it makes it a lot easier if you tell us non-PPR or PPR. So non-PPR, we got Debo Samuels or George Pickens. For me, it's Pickens. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's George Pickens for me. Russell Wilson has been great throwing the deep ball. He likes to attack outside the numbers. I think George Pickens has a smash week this week.
Yeah, Pickens has been wide receiver 9 since Russell
Yep.
Wilson's been there, so I like Pickens as well. Clarence, here we go. Let's go to Clarence. Clarence has got Shakir or Tank Dell. For me, it's Shakir. They have no Dalton Kincaid this week, and then for Houston, I love the matchup against Dallas, but we are getting Nico Collins back, so Shakir for me. You, Coach?
Yeah, it's Shakir for me. No Dalton Kincaid, no Keon Coleman. Like you talked about Mari Cooper battling a wrist injury, but he's probably going to play. But yeah, I'm with you there. I like Shakir.
All right, half PPR. We got Jalen Warren. We've got DJ Moore or Dawson Knox. I'm taking DJ Moore out of the equation because obviously you've seen what's been going on with Chicago. I do like their matchup against Green Bay, but I'm still not playing DJ Moore. So it comes down to Warren or Dawson Knox, half PPR. It would be Warren over Knox for me, but I totally get it if you go Knox.
Yeah, it's Knox for me, and but I think it's tough. Jalen Warren battling injury. I don't know what his snap share is going to be this week, but
Yeah.
I trust Austin Knox. I think you attack Kansas City through the slot, which is Dawson Knox and Cleo Shakir. So I like Dawson Knox this week over Jalen Warren. And
All
you're right,
right, we
DJ
got
Moore,
half. Say
not
that
even in
again.
the conversation. As I say, DJ Moore is not even in that conversation, which is very sad because I love the talent, just hate the situation.
I'm looking forward to watching him today, though, because he
Yep.
was kind of called out against by Xavier McKinley. Obviously, you got the big rivalry game, Green Bay Packers going to Chicago today, and Xavier wasn't afraid to mention that DJ Moore, you don't do that to a rookie quarterback walking
Yep.
off the field in the middle of a play. So that should be a fun matchup to watch today. Let's move on. Next one, we've got full PPR. We've got let's see. Do you trade Connor and Amon Ra for Walker and Sutton? I like Walker over Connor, but I don't think I can trade Amon Ra. So for
Yep.
me, I'm keeping Connor and Amon Ra.
Yep. Me too, man. I just think at the Monra, you got to keep the Monra St. Brown.
Flex, Ridley or McConkey in standard scoring. Who do you like of those two, Coach?
I like Ridley. I like what he's done recently. I don't necessarily love the matchup that the Titans have this week, but since D Hop has been gone, Ridley's been the clear wide receiver 1 there. So I take Ridley. I think he's got a higher ceiling than McConkey, just based on yardage.
Okay, here we go. We got Douglas Bourne or Rome Odunze PPR. Who do you like in this matchup, Coach?
I like Demario Douglas. I think he's the best wide receiver that they have in that group. So I'm going to go Demario
let's
Douglas
stop real
there.
quick.
Yep.
It's Butte instead of Bourne. For me, I actually broke down the New England game. I had that side, and I'm actually to go Butte over Douglas. When we break down the game, I'll tell you why. But for me, it's Butte over Douglas.
Love it.
Okay, and then we've got PPR Shakir Tank Dell. We've already had that question. Someone else asked us that one. We both went Shakir, and then we've got Junu Smith. I'm going to say that name wrong all day long, so I apologize to those of you that know what I'm saying.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. If you follow the coach approach, you know that there's no one worse at pronouncing names than myself. So, but in this one, it's Smith over Komet. We've talked about that passing game for Chicago being a real struggle. Fired the offensive coordinator last week, so who knows what's going to happen. So it's Smith over Komet for me. Game 2, here we go. Cleveland Browns 2-7 at the New Orleans Saints 3-7. My prediction: I like the Saints 17, Browns 14. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
I actually got Browns 26, Saints 23. I got Browns going into New Orleans and getting the win.
I like it. Who do you like starting for Cleveland?
So Jameis Winston, talk about the quarterback room. Saints allow the 9th fewest fantasy points per game and 4th fewest passing touchdowns to quarterbacks, and have the 4th most interceptions with 12. So the season-long stats can be a little deceiving, right? If you look at the last 5 weeks, they don't have Marshawn Lattimore. They've not played well recently. So Jameis Winston, I've got him in QB2 range. So 1 quarterback leagues, I don't love him there. Super flex, I don't hate it depending on which other options are. Nick Chubb, I think this is a breakout game for Nick Chubb. New Orleans has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to running backs, sixth most rushing yards, and second most rushing touchdowns with 12. I think this is the game you've seen his snap share kind of increase over the last couple of games. So I think Nick Chubb is I've got him in my touchdown prop bet. I got a parlay with touchdown scores. I think Nick Chubb finds the end zone this week. And then wide receiver room, I love Cedric Tillman. I mean, I'm playing Cedric Tillman. There's 3 games since the Amari Cooper trade. He's wide receiver 1 with an average of 22.2 fantasy points. He's finished as the wide receiver 10, wide receiver 3, and wide receiver 12. So I'm all in on Cedric Tillman. Jerry Jeudy, look, deeper leagues, wide receiver 3 flex play over the last 2 games. It's been nice to see him get 19 targets, but he's 12 grabs, 152 yards. So I don't hate Jerry Jeudy in deeper formats. The sneaky play for me is Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is sneaky flex play this week as the Saints have given up the most fantasy points per game to slot receivers, and he plays 64% of his snaps in the slot. So I do like Elijah Moore this week. And then tight end room, David Njoku. He's the Saints are mid against tight ends, right? In pretty much every category, they're kind of middle of the road. They've only given up 1 touchdown, but Njoku continues to get peppered with targets. So I still like David Njoku this week. I got him as tight end 4.
Like it. You got to love the performance that you've seen out of Tillman so far. I mean, kind of makes you wonder, was that simply he wasn't getting a shot because Cooper was there, or is this more of a Jameis Winston type of situation, having kind of unlocked that offense? But let's move on to New Orleans side. They're 16th in scoring, 13th in rushing, 16th in passing. The only must start for me in this side is Alvin Kamara. Going to the quarterback room, though, Derek Carr, quarterback 22 on the week. He's a super flex start. He's quarterback 20 and quarterback 6 the last 2 weeks. Browns are one of the worst defenses against the deep ball, allowing the 5th highest passing yards and 7th highest passing rating to deep passing. So because of that, I like Marquez Valdez-Scantling this week. He's a flex start. Look for him to get loose on one of those deep balls that we just talked about.
Yep.
And he's really my only other start that I would have. And he's really only a flex start, but it wouldn't be surprised for me to see him have like a 4-catch, 80-yard game with a 40-yard touchdown in there. Tight end room, you've got Taysom Hill. He's tight end 16 since week 6. Excuse me, since week 8. He's a fringe tight end 1 this week. Anything you would change there, Coach?
Nope, those are the only guys I would start as well.
All right, let's move on to Dave. Dave wants to know, first he starts off by saying, good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Start 2, sit 1. For me, it is Debo and Pickens are my starts. And the tight ends, I really like what Disley's done over the last few weeks, but it's Kraft for me. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's Debo, Pickens, and I'd go Kraft as well. And I like Disley just like you do, but I think you got to go with Kraft. I like what he does, especially after the catch. Just more athletic and gives you more in terms of yak yards.
All right, let's move on to Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for tuning in. It's rough in fantasy streets right now, half PPR. We starting Juju, Douglas, or Pierce. For me, if there is a part of A-Rich's game you like, it is the fact that he can extend plays and hit the deep ball. So for me, if of those choices, I'm going to pick Pierce.
Can I say I don't like any of them?
Yeah, you can, and that's why
fair?
Andrew told us.
Andrew, we love you, man. But
that's why he said it's rough on the fantasy street. So
it is rough. It is rough in the fantasy streets if that's your choices, man. And I hear you. I've got plenty of choices just like that in my leagues as well. So I'm with you.
Okay, rest of the season, 4 points per touchdowns. Do you like Darnold the rest of the year, or do you like Drake May?
I like Drake May, man. I like the rushing upside there. And I was a Sam Darnold guy in the beginning of the year in terms of people thinking Justin Jefferson couldn't still be an elite receiver with Sam Darnold. We've proven that to be wrong. Justin Jefferson is still an elite receiver with Sam Darnold, but we've seen Darnold struggle a little bit with the turnovers lately, which is who he has been throughout his career. I just think the rushing upside with Drake May, I'd take Drake May.
That's tough. It is tough because what we saw earlier in the year from Darnold, I mean, the 3 interceptions last week inside the red zone are obviously scary. However, to me, I'm just going to take the better offense. So it would be Darnold for me. Hope you can make a pick based off of that. Let's move on to game 3. Indianapolis Colts 4-6 at the New York Jets 3-7. I got the Jets winning 24-20. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I got Jets 24, Colts 17.
Okay, Indianapolis offense 18th in scoring, 14th in rushing, 19th in passing. Who are we starting for Indianapolis, Coach?
So let's start with Anthony Richardson, and it's probably who are we sitting? I get it. We talk about the passing game. In 6 games played, he's completing only 44% of his passes. Over his last 2 games, he's completed 20 of 56. That's a 35.7% clip. He's thrown 1 touchdown in the last 4 games, ranks outside the top 30 in pressure completion percentage, play action completion percentage, clean pocket when you're supposed to be really good. He's outside the top 30. If you talk about the run game, yeah. I mean, Jets have given up 5 rushing touchdowns to quarterback this year, the 10th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson is the top 5 in carries per game and rushing yards per game as a quarterback when he plays. That's where you're going to find fantasy value. But he's a sit for me in 1 quarterback leagues. If you're chasing the rushing touchdown, you could play him in super flex. I don't hate it because I get the rushing upside. As far as running back rooms, Jonathan Taylor, he's a smash play for me this week. He's RB9 in standard scoring. He's had 20 or more touches in 4 of his last 5 games, and over 100 scrimmage yards in 5 of the last 6. So he's a smash start for me. And then wide receiver room, Josh Downs. I don't love the matchup this week. And he dropped from wide receiver 17 to wide receiver 26 in the consensus rankings when they announced Anthony Richardson was going to be the starting quarterback. Even though he's been a volume play at 21% target share and 29% first read share in games with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is 42nd in catchable pass rate. He does not throw a good catchable ball, so I don't trust Josh Downs this week, but you're probably playing him if you've got 3 wide receiver spots in your starting lineup or as a potential flex play. Michael Pittman, I'm out on. He's been battling through a back injury over the last 4 games. He's got only 8 grabs for 128 yards. Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, I'm out on those guys. But to your point, yeah, Alec Pearson has been the vertical stretch guy in this offense when Anthony Richardson is playing. So you could get a smash, touchdown there. But I just don't trust anybody outside of Josh Downs as pass catchers go. And they don't have a tight end ranked in the top 37 at the position. So I'm not playing any tight ends for the Colts.
All right, I like it. Let's get to this question real quick before we get to the other side of the ball. Jared wants to know Elijah Moore, Odunze, or Josh Downs. I know I just heard you talk about your concerns with Josh Downs. So of those 3, who do you feel most comfortable starting, Coach?
Well, of those 3, I think you still have to go Josh Downs just because of the talent, right? As high as I am on Elijah Moore this week in that matchup, I got to go Josh Downs there. I mean, of those 3 options, you got to go with the guy that's got the most talented offense. And I expect the Colts to be playing from behind, which means more pass attempts. So,
all right, let's move to the other side of the ball. New York Jets offense, they're 26th in scoring, 30th in rushing, 17th in passing yards. Quarterback room, Aaron Jones, quarterback 20 on the week. He struggled last week against a poor Arizona pass defense. He's quarterback 21 in fantasy points per season. So for me, he is a super flex start only. Running back room, Breece Hall is a must start. Wide receiver room, I really like Garrett Wilson this week. He's wide receiver 11. Devontae Adams is also a start for me. He's wide receiver 33 since joining the since joining the Jets. And then for the tight end room, Tyler Conklin, tight end 24. He's only a flex start at best for me. Let's move on. Let's see. Lewis has a question for us. CMC for Jamar Chase, a good trade. It obviously depends if we're talking. I'm assuming this is redraft.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that too.
And regardless, for me, I would do that trade no matter what. I have more confidence in Jamar Chase the rest of the season than I do in CMC.
Yep, and it's a tough one, man. But Jamar Chase is playing at such a high level in that offense, and he was my wide receiver 1 going into the year. He's in that spot right now, so I expect him to continue to go on that. I'm going to shoot 264 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. So Jamar Chase.
Right. Andrew wants to know full PPR start 2, Chubb, Myers, or McConkey. For me, it's Chubb and McConkey.
Yep, I agree, 100%.
All right, let's move on. Game 4, Minnesota Vikings 7-2 at Tennessee Titans 2-7. I got Vikings 28, Titans 16. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I got Vikings 24, Tennessee Titans 14.
Okay, Minnesota offense 10th in scoring, 16th in rushing, 12th in passing. Who are we starting for Minnesota, Coach?
Yeah, so let's talk about quarterback room. Tennessee allows the fewest passing yards per game on the season, but they have the 6th fewest sacks and 4th fewest interceptions. So they're not necessarily applying pressure. They're just great in coverage. Sam Darnold has scored 15 or more fantasy points in 7 of 9 games. Titans have only allowed 2 top 16 fantasy quarterbacks since week 4. Darnold had 17 touchdown passes, but NFL leading 10 interceptions, with 5 of those coming in the last couple of games. So he's a mid QB2 play for me this week. So 1 quarterback leagues, he's not a start for me. Superflex, I'm definitely okay starting him. Running back room, Tennessee allows the 6th fewest rushing yards and 5th fewest receptions to running backs. But Aaron Jones is RB16 in half PPR scoring. He's scored in double digits in 7 out of 9 games. He's seen a 64% snap share, 61% rushing share, and a 13% target share. I think he gets 16 or more touches and over 68 scrimmage yards this week. He's done that in 8 out of 9 games. So not a great matchup on paper, but I trust the volume, so I'm starting Aaron Jones as an RB2. Wide receiver room, Justin Jefferson. He's exactly what we mean when we say start your studs. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. He's in your lineup. He's seen 8 or more targets in 7 straight games, 81 or more yards in 7 out of 9 games, so he's a start. I don't like Jordan Addison this week. He's wide receiver 44 on the season. Since T.J. Hawkins returned to the lineup 2 weeks ago, Addison's getting a 12% target share and 13% air yard share. Those are not good numbers, so he's a sit for me. And then, of course, in the tight end room, Tennessee allows the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends and the 3rd fewest receiving touchdowns to tight ends. But this is another one where season-long stats don't tell the whole story. They've struggled against tight ends over the last 3 games, and T.J. Hawkinson is an uber talent. He's a tight end one play for me every week, so I'm playing T.J. Hawkinson.
All right, let's move the other side of the ball. Tennessee's offense is 27th in scoring, 10th in rushing, 31st in passing. Quarterback 25 on the week, Will Levis. He's a sit for me. Running back room, running back 22 on the week is Tony Pollard. He's a tough start because Tajay Spears came back last week, had kind of a 40-60 share with him in the lineup. So, I mean, I get it if you're starting Pollard, but with Spears back, that's kind of tough. He's got Spears last week, first game back after missing a couple games. He had 10 touches for 51 yards. So that backfield becomes a little muddled with the two of them in there. You mentioned Calvin Ridley earlier. For me, he is a start. It is a tough matchup against Minnesota, the 7th lowest passing rating to perimeter wide receiver since week 5, but I still like Calvin Ridley and everyone else. So really the only start that I have for Tennessee must start is Calvin Ridley, but I certainly get it if you're going to have to play Pollard. Let's move on. Andrew wants to know, do you think Braylon Allen is worth a flex spot this week? I think it all depends on the game. If the Jets jump out, you heard them talk about, or I should say I listened to offense coordinator for the Jets talking about why Allen's kind of slipped in the last few weeks. It's all because of a negative game script. If the Jets can jump out and take any lead, then I like Braylon Allen late in the game to get a lot of carries. So it all depends on game script, coach, for me.
Yeah, the problem is he hasn't seen more than 33% snap share in any of the last 5 games, really 6 games. I'm looking at it right now. I'm pulling it up. So, yeah, in the last 6 games, his highest snap share was 33%. So most of those games are coming under that. So, yeah, unless you're going to get some short yards, goal line carries, or, again, positive game script late in the game, I can see him getting some touches, but he's not a safe play for me.
All right, let's move on to Johnny Justice. Kyler Murray on bye. Which quarterback to stream? Drake May, Aaron Rodgers, Winston, or Cousins? How about you? What do you think on this one, Coach?
God, it's a tough one, man. Drake May, obviously, I like Drake May. I don't love his matchup this week. Aaron Rodgers, I think, does have a decent bounce-back game this week. I think the Jets are in a must-win game. So I'm going to probably go Aaron Rodgers. I don't love the Kirk Cousins matchup, but I do have Atlanta winning that game. We'll get to that game, but I just think Aaron Rodgers gets you a couple of touchdown passes this week.
It's funny because when we just got done talking about the rest of the season, Drake May or Kirk Cousins, I said Cousins. But for this one, I would say actually it was Darnold, not Cousins.
Yeah.
For this one, I'd rather have May this week than the other three. Let's move on to our next game. We've got Green Bay Packers 6-3 at the Chicago Bears 4-5. My pick. I got the Packers 27, Bears 14. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
So I got 2 things coming to play here. Green Bay has won 10 straight games against the Bears, and the Packers have not started 0-3 in the division since 2005. Packers get the win 26-13 over the Bears. I just don't trust the Bears offense right now. They don't have an identity, so I'm going Green Bay in this one.
I had to throw on the Green Bay hat just to show you my allegiance. But let's get to the Green Bay offense as you're going to break down that side of the ball for us, Coach. Who do you like for Green Bay? They're 9th in scoring, 3rd in rushing, and 7th in passing.
Yeah, we talk about Jordan Love. He's QB 13 this week. We've got him, so he's just outside QB1 territory, QB 10 in fantasy points per game. We know the drill. He scored 17 or more points in his first 5 starts and thrown 15 touchdowns. But he's also thrown no touchdowns and 2 interceptions over the last 2 games. He's tied for the NFL lead with 10 interceptions, and he's missed 2 games. Only one quarterback top 12 finish against the Bears defense this season, and he's not. So he's not a must start for me in one quarterback leagues, but it'd be tough based on who you have. I mean, the Bears defense has played well, but I'm still a Jordan Love guy. I know you are as well, so I don't mind starting him. But there's some better plays in one quarterback leagues. Josh Jacobs, as far as running back goes, I think he has a smash week this week. I think he's over 80 yards rushing. I think he finds the end zone. He's also part of my touchdown parlay prop this week, so I love Josh Jacobs this week. Wide receiver room, Jaden Reed. Not a great matchup as the Bears have held slot receivers to the third fewest fantasy points per game since week 5. I think he's the most talented wide receiver in this offense, but I'm tempering expectations this week. He's a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. Romeo Doubs for me. They've locked up slot receivers, but have been a little bit more friendly to outside receivers. I think they're 14th in fantasy points against perimeter receivers versus top 5 against the slot. But the Bears play a lot of single high. Dobbs against single high is going to have 25% first read share. So I actually like Romeo Doubs this week. I think he could be the best option for the Packers this week. And then Christian Watson, Dontavion Wicks. There's not enough there, not enough excitement there to play either one of those guys. I do think it's one of those games where Christian Watson probably pops for a 60-yard touchdown and only gets 2 other grabs outside of that. But I'm just not willing to bank on that. So, and then Tucker Kraft. We talked about this before the season started. We've liked Tucker Kraft since the offseason. You've been a little bit high. You were a little bit in on him before I was, but I really like Tucker Kraft. He's 4 top 12 fantasy finishes since week 4. I'm in on Tucker Kraft.
Let's move on to the other side of the ball. Chicago's offense, 24th in scoring, 25th in rushing, 30th in passing. Really, there's only one guy in this game that that's worth starting for me, and that's DeAndre Swift. Running back 19 in fantasy points per game, averages 20.6 touches and 113 yards since week 4. So he is my only start in this game. If I had to start a receiver, it's Rome Odunze. I think you've seen the uptick over the last few weeks with him, but I'm not comfortable starting anyone in the passing attack for Chicago. So it's DeAndre Swift or no one from me.
Isn't it funny how we've gone from this offseason to say Caleb Williams laying the best situation of any rookie quarterback ever with the 3 receivers and Cole Kmet and, DeAndre Swift. And we just thought it was going to be this, is he going to throw for first Bears quarterback to throw for 4,000? We put so much on that guy's plate. And now here we are saying we don't trust playing a pass catcher. I mean, it's wild, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting to the point where you got to just look at the culture of the Chicago Bears and say there is the problem. It's not so much the players, but we'll see if that can ever be rectified. Let's move on to Game 6. Jacksonville Jaguars 2-8 at the Detroit Lions 8-1. My pick: Lions 35, Jaguars 14. I don't even know if it'll be that close, but what about you, Coach?
I was trying to look up my prop bet this week for Andrew, so I'll share it with you when I get a second here, and I'll pull it up. But Jacksonville, I've got here's what's weird. Jacksonville, this morning, as I'm going through the notes, the Jags come out and announce today that Doug Peterson, this could be his last week. You make that announcement before you go out in game time. That's such an odd time to make that announcement. So talk about a weird deal, just putting your players in that situation before kickoff. But I got Detroit Lions 37, Jaguars 16. I think this is a blowout game for Detroit.
All right, let's get to the Jacksonville offense. They're 21st in scoring, 24th in rushing, and 23rd in passing. Who are we starting, if anybody, for Jacksonville, Coach?
Well, I can tell you I'm not starting Mac Jones. He's QB 25 last week, finished 14 of 22 for 111 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Lions should have a big lead. They get Zadarius Smith this week. He's active, so I think I'm excited for that. He takes the place of Aiden Hutchinson. Running back room. So Travis Etienne to me he's a start for me this week, and I say that because I think with Tank Bigsby out, he's shown through his short career he can be a guy that gets just 6, 7, 8 grabs in a game. So in a PPR format, I'm not afraid to play Travis Etienne this week with no Tank Bigsby. And then Brian Thomas, love the talent, wide receiver 22 in fantasy points per game this season. Been battling chest injury over the last few weeks. Over his last 3 games, he's averaging just 3.3 targets, 2.3 grabs, and 31.3 receiving yards. But prior to that injury, he had scored in 4 out of 5 games, had 80 or more receiving yards in 3 of those games. Again, negative game script means opportunities in the passing game. Do I trust Mac Jones to be able to feed him the ball? I do, because I think you're going to manufacture touches for Brian Thomas. So he's a wide receiver 3. So he's either a flex play or wide receiver 3 play for me this week. I do still like him in my lineups. Gabe Davis and Parker Washington, I'm completely out on. I know Gabe Davis is supposed to play today. And Evan Ingram, I don't know how you don't start Evan Ingram regardless of the matchup. I think the targets and the peppering are going to be there. They're going to continue to do that. So he's a start for me this week.
All right, let's move to the other side of the ball. We've got the Detroit offense, second in scoring, seventh in rushing, 14th in passing. This is real easy for me. You got Goff as a must start. You got Gibbs as a must start. You got Montgomery as a start. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown as a must start. For me, I got Jamison Williams as a flex start. He had 3 receptions for 53 yards last week after missing 2 games. And you're not starting a tight end because Sam Laporta is out. So Goff, Gibbs, Montgomery, Brown, Williams, all starts for me. You good with that, Coach?
I'm good with it.
All right, we've got Jake. Jake's got 2 leagues, both full PPR. Knox or Ferguson. That's Knox for me. And then Ferguson or Javonte Williams in a flex spot. It's Ferguson over Williams. I kind of think the other guy, the rookie, took over the backfield last week for Denver. We're going to get to him in a few minutes.
Yeah, here's what the sad part, and we'll get to the Cowboys game. I'm so glad you get to break that one down and not me this week. But yeah, I'm almost Knox over Ferguson there. So, and then Ferguson over Javonte. I'm starting Ferguson there though, because yeah, to your point, and you get in a snapshot. I think I got Denver this week on the breakdown, and yeah, it's the rookie Audric Esteem versus Javonte Williams. So Ferguson for me there.
All right, we've got Bo Nix or Herbert. Taylor says he's leaning Herbert. I'm looking at the rankings. I actually got Nix over Herbert this week, but I think you've got Nix as quarterback 7, Herbert is quarterback 12. So for me, they're both good starts, but I like Nix with his rushing. Even though we did see last week that we had a little Lamar Jackson and Herbert last week with his rushing yards.
Yeah, we did, and I think Herbert. I think I broke that game down. I think he's had more. I think it's 9 rush attempts last week, which is the most he's had this season. So he is starting to use his legs a little bit more. I think he's understanding that, hey, I need to keep plays alive, get us easy first downs, move the chains. But it's I feel like Herbert's got the best matchup this week between the two. So I'm probably going to lean Herbert, which I hate it when we're not on the same side on these. But I like Herbert over Nix this week, just from a passing standpoint.
All right, here we go. Game 7. Los Angeles Rams 4-5 at the New England Patriots 3-7. Rams for me 24, Patriots 20. How do you see this game, Coach?
Well, I'm trying to find it. I lost my page here. Let me get to it real quick. Right. I've got Rams 28, New England Patriots 20. And let me get to Andrew's touchdown props real quick before I forget.
Okay.
Just real quick. So I've got George Pickens. Hopefully Andrew's listening. I got George Pickens. I've got Calvin Ridley. I got Cedric Tillman. I got Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed, and Travis Kelce to find the end zone this week.
I like the Jaden Reed pick, especially since you just told us a few minutes ago that they've got a tough matchup from slot receivers. But, we got to see that same type of player that we had at the beginning of the season where Jaden Reed made Philadelphia look kind of silly. So we haven't seen that in a while.
That's where I trust the Jordan Love touchdown passes. The guys throwing touchdown passes like they're going out of style. So
yeah, let's just
hope they connect.
Let's just hope he limits the throwing the ball to the Chicago Bears, as he's been kind of prone to some picks this year. But Alex Johnson, once again,
good morning, sir.
So much. That's our boss. We want to take this time to thank him for this opportunity he's given us with yards per. Okay, let's go to the other side of the ball. We've got did we already get to the LA Rams? No, we didn't, because you went with the prop bets. So LA Rams offense, 20th in scoring, 26th in rushing, 8th in passing. Who are we starting for the Rams, Coach?
So I like Matthew Stafford this week. He's QB 27 on the season, a little misleading as he's been without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua for several games. In 9 games, he's only thrown 10 touchdowns and has an interception 6 straight games. But over the last 3, he's had 6 touchdown passes, an average 290 passing yards, and 41.3 pass attempts per game. Sean McVay is so good at designing and scheming and building a passing game that complements the run game. And I think people forget how much he likes to run the football, but he's so good at getting guys in space that I really like Matthew Stafford this week against the Patriots, who are giving up 17 or more fantasy points in 5 games this season. So I'm in on Matthew Stafford. Kyron Williams, he's RB6 and half PPR in the season at 16.5 points per game. He's got 7 straight games of 20-plus touches and 76 or more scrimmage yards. He's a start for me. And obviously, you're starting Puka Nacua, you're starting Cooper Kupp, no questions asked. They both have wide receiver 1 upside every week, regardless of matchup. The tight end room's easy. Davis Allen, Colby Parkinson, they've been splitting snap shares. But Davis Allen did get 88% of the snaps and 14% of the target share last week. Looks like he's the tight end one in that room, but I don't trust either one of those guys this week to play.
All right, let's move the other side of the ball. New England's offense, 31st in scoring, 22nd in rushing, 32nd in passing. Quarterback room, quarterback 15 on the week is Drake May. He has top 12 finish in half his starts, averaging 5 carries and 43 yards rushing in his starts. So Drake May is a super flex start for me. Running back room, Ramondre Stevenson. He's a start, running back 23 in fantasy points per game, has played 70% of the snaps since week 8. We always talk about volume is king, and when you're out on the field, it sure helps volume. Wide receiver room, I've got Demario Douglas as a sit. I got Keyshawn Booty as a frisky start. He has 6 deep targets and on the games May has started. We talked briefly how I see him getting loose on a big one today. Tight end room, Hunter Henry. He's a flex start, 16.2 target share with May at quarterback. Moving on, Game 8. This should be a fun game to watch this afternoon. Baltimore Ravens 7-3 at the Pittsburgh Steelers 7-2. I like the Steelers winning at home, Coach. I got them winning 24-21. What says you?
So Pittsburgh has won 7 of 8 games against the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's 1-3 against the Steelers as a starter. If the Steelers win the game, they take a 2-game lead in the AFC North. I don't see Baltimore allowing them to do that. I think the combination of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry is too much. I don't think this is your traditional, Greg Roman offense. I think there's opportunities there, and we're seeing what Lamar's doing in the passing game in terms of really elevating his game there. I think the Baltimore Ravens end up walking out of this game with a half-game lead in the AFC North.
Let's get to that Baltimore offense. They're first in scoring, first in rushing, and third in passing. With those numbers, I'm expecting you're going to be starting a lot of guys.
Yeah, it's wow, 31.8 points per game, and then their passing has actually gone down, or rushing's gone down from 182 to 116 over the last 3, but the passing numbers have actually increased. They're passing the ball more, which I think is just going to set Derrick Henry up even more. But Pittsburgh allows the second fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks and fourth fewest touchdowns. They're 6th in interceptions against quarterbacks with 10, but it's Lamar Jackson, and you're playing Lamar Jackson. We don't need to get into all the numbers. There's massive amounts of numbers to get to, but he's absolutely a must start. Running back room, Derrick Henry, he's RB1 in fantasy points per game. And look, it's not just standard scoring. He's so far ahead of the second-place guy that even in PPR, where he doesn't get a lot of receptions, he's the number 1 running back. So you're starting Derrick Henry. Wide receiver room, Zay Flowers. Pittsburgh allows the 9th fewest fantasy points per game and the fewest touchdowns to wide receivers, only 4. Zay Flowers is wide receiver 20 in fantasy points per game at 14.2, but he scored 18 or more points in 3 of the last 5. He's had over 110 yards receiving in 4 of the last 6. I'm still in on, and I posted this on Twitter. There's an assumption that Joey Porter is going to lock up Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers lines up in the slot at a 38% clip, and Joey Porter's only played in the slot 31 of 556 snaps. So I think that's not the case. To get 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, typically put Zay Flowers out, but they use condensed formation. So I think they're going to find ways to get Zay Flowers open. I don't trust Rashad Bateman. If anybody's going to get the Joey Porter treatment, it's probably Rashad Bateman. And I don't trust Deontay Johnson. We've seen nothing out of him since he's been traded. In tight end room, Mark Andrews, he scored more than 14.5 points in 4 of the last 5 games. Like Travis Kelce, I think he's back. They do get Isaiah Likely back this week, but I still think that Mark Andrews is come back and he's fully healthy. At the beginning of the season, he's battling a few nagging injuries, so I think Mark Andrews is a play this week.
Okay, let's move over to the Pittsburgh side of the ball. We got to get through some games here. We've only got 21 minutes left in the show. Yep. So Pittsburgh's offense, 12th in scoring, 8th in rushing, 26th in passing. Quarterback room, quarterback 10 on the week, Russell Wilson. He's a start. Quarterback 1 and 2 of 3 starts. 3rd in yards per attempt and fantasy points per drop back. Running back room, Najee Harris. He's a flex start. Baltimore has allowed the 4th fewest yards per game, so it's not a great situation for him. And then Jaylen Warren, he's a sit for me. He popped up on the injury issue on Thursday with a back issue. He has averaged 13.5 touches and 77 yards the last 2 games. Wide receiver 7 on the week, George Pickens, must start. He's a wide receiver 9 or better with Wilson at quarterback. And then Pat Freiermuth, the tight end 20 on the season. He's a start this week with Baltimore giving up the third most receiving yards to tight ends and the 10th most fantasy points per game. All right, here we go. Another trade, full PPR. He changed it up a little bit. We now have Connor and Amon-Ra to get Walker and CDs.
Ooh.
That's a little bit better. But does the situation with the Dallas offense with their quarterback, not going to be back this year? Who do you like? Are you comfortable trading for CD?
I love how the guy put that in there to make a stronger case than the first offer. I think Jared Nelson, this is probably redraft and not dynasty. So yeah, if it's redraft, I'm still keeping Amon-Ra St. Brown and James Conner just because of exactly to your point. First of all, how many big games has CeeDee Lamb had with Dak Prescott this year? 2. Yeah, he's got the points per game because he had the one big, massive game, which he had in week 7, which he did in week 7 last year as well. But yeah, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown consistently and a much better offense. It's hard for me to give up Amon-Ra right now, even for CD.
All right, let's move on to game 9. Seattle Seahawks 4-5 at San Francisco 49ers 5-4. I got the 49ers 31, Seahawks 21. Who do you have, Coach?
Yeah, I got San Francisco 34, Seahawks 23.
Seattle's offense 15th in scoring, 27th in rushing, 1st in passing. Who are we starting for the Seahawks?
Well, I'm not starting Geno Smith. He's QB 14 this week, but I think he's ranked a little bit high with consensus. I get the passing yards per game early in the season, but that's really tailed off the last couple of weeks. I don't love the matchup for Geno Smith this week, so he's a sit for me. I get it. Superflex leagues, he might be your best option as your second quarterback. Running back room, San Francisco allows 7th fewest rushing yards, but the 9th most rushing touchdowns and 9th most receptions, typically because teams are in a negative game script against San Francisco. Kenneth Walker, I like because he gives you a lot in both the ground game and in the passing game recently, so I like Kenneth Walker. DK Metcalf, he's missed the last 2 games in the injury. He's back this week in week 6 against San Francisco. He saw 11 targets, but just 3 grabs for 48 yards, but he's had 99 or more receiving yards in 4 of the last 6 games. DK Metcalf's a start. I don't like the matchup for Jackson Smith and Jigba this week, and I don't like Tyler Lockett this week. And, of course, the tight end room, Noah Fant is out. A.J. Barner is still in. Haven't seen enough for him to be excited, so I'm not starting A.J. Barner this week.
Moving to the other side of the ball, San Francisco's offense, 7th in scoring, 5th in rushing, 2nd in passing. Quarterback room, quarterback 6 for the week, Brock Purdy. He's also quarterback 6 on the season in fantasy points per game. Seattle has allowed the 4th most passing yards per game, so Brock Purdy must start. Running back 2 on the week, Christian McCaffrey. You guys got him back. You held him all year long. You're starting him. Wide receiver 14, Deebo Samuel must start. Wide receiver 27, Jawan Jennings. He's a flex start for me. He had 7 catches and 93 yards last week. And then Ricky Pearsall. For me, he's a frisky start. I like him. I'm going to go ahead and put him in there this week. Seattle has allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game and 3rd most receiving yards per game to perimeter wide receivers. And then tight end 2, George Kittle, another must start. Essentially, I'm starting anyone who's got a 49er jersey on this week, Coach.
Yeah, it looks like it just came out. I was reading on this. George Kittle playing against the Seattle Seahawks. George Kittle will miss the Niners game against the Seahawks on Sunday per Adam Schefter.
Okay, so let's take off
Kittle. He's out. That's a killer.
Thank you so much.
I was curious because this morning it was not updated yet, but I noticed he popped up on the injury report, I think, on Thursday, so I want to double check on that. Looks like he's out.
Yeah, we just got that too, a report from Jace. Jace, thank you so much for that. We'll put that up here in a second. Sheldon wants to know, he's having trouble. Should he start Tillman, Reed, or T. Higgins? Those are some tough ones. That's a nice choice to have.
Good morning, guys. Having trouble. Should I start Cedric Tillman, Jaden Reed, or T. Higgins? Full PPR flex. Well, we have Jaden Reed as a touchdown prop and Tillman, and I do like T. Higgins this week in that matchup. So I actually like all. Well, I don't love Jaden Reed. We talked about that with the pack, but I do have him getting a touchdown this week. So in terms of total volume, I'm probably leaning Cedric Tillman there.
Yeah, Tillman for me as well. Let's move on to the Smitty. The Smitty has he's 4-6 and needs a win to make the playoffs or get into the playoffs. Let's go 2 quarterback league, Superflex, Mayer Stafford. Stafford for me. You good with that, Coach?
Yeah, Stafford for me too. Do we get to Chase Johnson's question? Sorry.
We'll
Boston
go back
Knox
to
or
it.
Kincaid? Okay.
Yeah, we'll go back to it. So we're going with Stafford. Now we got to start 2. We're going to start Ramonde, Chase Brown, or Monty. For me, it's Chase Brown and Monty. What about you, Coach?
Chase Brown and Monty for me too.
All right, let's go back to Chase or Jace, I should say. Dawson Knox or Hunter Henry. We're going Knox there, Coach.
I like Knox. I do.
Oh, all right, Wonder Balls. George Pickens or Cooper Cup. For me, it is. That's a tough one, but
It's gonna be a good one. I want to hear what you say on this one. Yeah.
for me, it's pretty close. But I'm going to go with Cooper Cup over Pickens.
Yeah, I think you got to go with Cooper Cup. I just, again, Sean McVay, what he does in that offense, I trust Cooper Cup, especially from a volume standpoint. I mean, Pickens can give you 5 grabs for 115 and 2 tutties, but Cooper Cup should see 10 to 13 targets today.
All right, game 10, Atlanta Falcons 6-4 at the Denver Broncos 5-5. Broncos for me, my pick. Broncos 21, Falcons 20. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
This is one of 3 games I kept going back and forth on. I've got Falcons 23, Denver Broncos 20. So
yeah, I just like the way Broncos are playing right now.
I do too.
I mean, they should have got a win last week against Kansas City, but let's move on. Predictions, we already did. Let's get to the Atlanta offense. They are 13th in scoring, 12th in rushing, 5th in passing. Get to the quarterback room, Coach.
Yeah, so Denver allows the 8th fewest fantasy points per game and 11th fewest fantasy touchdown passes with just 12 against, but they have the 2nd most quarterback sacks and 13th most interceptions, man. They're getting after it and they're forcing turnovers. So Kirk Cousins, he's completing 68% of his passes this season, has thrown 17 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Over the last 3 games, he's got 7 touchdowns and a pick. This is a very good defense in Denver. They've only allowed 2 quarterbacks to finish in the top 12 this season, so he's in the QB2 range. So 1 quarterback leagues, I think you got better options. Super flex, I get it if you need to play him, especially what I think is a big, they need to get a win this week. Running back room, Bijan Robinson, he's RB3 in fantasy points per game. He's got 5 consecutive games, more than 21.5 PPR points. This is where you attack Denver. They're 13th fewest fantasy points per game, 11th fewest in rushing yards. We give up the 5th most receiving yards to running backs, giving up 8 total touchdowns. I think Bijan Robinson finds the end zone, and he's heavily involved. Drake London, he scored 17 more fantasy points in 6 games. I like Drake London this week. I understand from he scored in 4 of the last 6 games and ranked 2nd red zone targets at the wide receiver position. He's got 27% target share this year, 34% air yard share. He's getting 50% of the red zone target. So he's a start for me. I get it. People are going to say Patrick Surtain, I know, and I get it, but I still like Drake London this week. Darnell Mooney, he's earned at least 6 targets in 8 out of 10 games and has 3 straight games, 86 or more yards with 2 touchdowns. But he should get, in my opinion, the Patrick Surtain treatment this week. When shadowing primary wide receivers on 60% of their routes, he's allowing less than 30 yards. If you look at the snaps and where players are getting the snaps from, Atlanta is starting to move Drake London into the slot and playing the big slot role. I think they do more of that this week. So I actually think, again, another reason why I like Drake London this week over Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney, for me, is not a start. He's in deep wide receiver 3 range, mid wide receiver 3 range, I should say. Then Kyle Pitts, tight end 9. Denver allows the 7th most receptions and 11th most receiving touchdowns to tight end, so I like Kyle Pitts this week.
Let's go to the other side of the ball. You've got the Denver offense, 22nd in scoring, 20th in rushing, 27th in passing. Quarterback room, Bo Nix. He's quarterback 11 on the week, quarterback 7 in fantasy points per game since week 5. Atlanta has allowed the 7th most passing TDs, the 4th highest CPOE, and 12th highest EPA per dropback. So I like Bo Nix this week, even in 1 quarterback leagues. Running back room, Audric Estime. I'm sure I got that wrong. He's a start for me at 14 carries for 53 yards while playing 45% of the snaps. I expect that share load to even increase this week. Javonte Williams is a sit. Wide receiver room, the only other guy I'm starting for Denver is Courtland Sutton. Top 24 finish in 4 of his last 5 games. All right, let's get to a question before we get to our tight end room. We're not starting anyone for Denver. Here we go. Start Aaron Jones or Jawan Jennings PPR league this week. For me, I said I like Jennings, but I'm going with the guy who's higher in the pecking order, so I'm going with Jones.
Yeah, I'm going with Aaron Jones too. Now, it does make it more interesting with George Kittle out in terms of Jawan Jennings, but I think Ricky Pearsall has stepped up. Obviously, with CMC, he gets heavily involved in the passing game. Yeah, I just trust the running back and the touches and the volume that Aaron Jones is going to get.
So, Todd, I guess we just answered this question. He said, do I start Estime or Williams? For me, it's Estime. You good with that, Coach?
Yep, I'm good with Estime as well.
All right, let's move on. Game 11. This should be a hell of a game to watch. Kansas City 9-0 at Buffalo 8-2. I got the Bills winning, though, Coach. I like the Bills winning 27-24. What says you?
I got Bills 24, Kansas City Chiefs 21. I think what this comes down to is, can the Bills stop Kansas City on third down, where they're getting 52% success rate? Bills are giving up 40%, which is 21st in the league defensively on third downs, but I think the Bills do enough to win this game at home.
All right, here we go. Kansas City's offense, 11th in scoring, 21st in rushing, 9th in passing. Who are we starting for Kansas City?
Yeah, so obviously Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they're starting to get more passing volumes. Travis Kelce's back to being a tight end one, yada, yada, yada. He scored 14 or more fantasy points in every game over the last 3 games. He's the QB7. He's thrown 6 touchdown passes, just 1 interception over the last 3. You're starting Patrick Mahomes. Running back room, Kareem Hunt. This is probably the last game where he's the guy. Isaiah Pacheco's out this week, but looking to probably get back in the fold next week. So he's going to get some touches. Kareem Hunt scored 12.8 or more points in 5 straight games, and so I think he's a play. I think you continue to trust that volume there. He probably finds the end zone. DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver, 58 fantasy points per game. What a change of scenery it makes going to Kansas City over the last 2 weeks in a full-time role. He's wide receiver 8 at 16.1 per game. I think he stays hot. I trust DeAndre Hopkins. I'm out on Xavier Worthy. I'm out on Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm out on Justin Watson. Any other pass catcher in that wide receiver room outside of him. And then Travis Kelce, he started the season with just 8 grabs on 12 targets through the first 3 games. Everybody was, all over, hey, do I drop Travis Kelce? What do I do? Since week 4, he's averaging 10.7 targets, 8.7 grabs, and 71 yards per game. He should be in your lineup.
All right, let's get to a question before we get to the Buffalo side. Spears or Elijah Moore in flex, Coach?
Elijah Moore for me, and I know that's crazy, but I still think Tony Pollard is gonna get the lion's share of the touches. Spears is gonna eat into that. We could see a 60-40 type split, but I still think Elijah Moore. I think he's gonna pop this week. I really do.
Okay, let's get back to the Buffalo offense. Their offense is 3rd in scoring, 15th in rushing, 13th in passing. Josh Allen must start. James Cook must start. Khalil Shakir, wide receiver 29 on the week. He's wide receiver 21 since week 7. He's a start for me. And then we talk about the tight end room. Dalton Kincaid is out. We feel comfortable starting Dawson Knox. Moving on, game 12. Cincinnati Bengals 4-6 at the San Diego Chargers 6-3. I like the Chargers 24, Bengals 22. What says you, Coach?
I just think that Bengals offense is rolling. I think the Chargers defense, yes, they played well all year, but they haven't had great matchups in terms of top teams. I think Bengals 31, Chargers 24. I think that Bengals offense keeps rolling, especially. And look, you're 4-6. You got to get a win this week if you're going to stay in competition in the AFC North.
All right. We definitely disagree on that one. But let's go talk about the Cincinnati offense. They're 6th in scoring, 29th in rushing, and 4th in passing. Give us some starts for Cincinnati, Coach.
Yeah, you're starting Joe Burrow. He's QB4 in fantasy points per game this season, QB1 over the last 2 games. He's been absolutely on fire. He's attempted 95 passes, and he's thrown for 679 yards with 9 touchdowns in simply the last 2 games. So, and he gets T. Higgins back this week. So Joe Burrow's a smash start. Chase Brown, Chase Brown is RB11. He's RB2 over the last 2 games. He's 24.6 a game. The last 3 games, he's seen 68 touches for 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. I still trust Chase Brown from a volume play. He's involved in the passing game. Khalil Herbert, I'm just going to touch on him. He's been traded. He's got a 3% snap share last week, so not a start, obviously. Jamar Chase, he's a start. Don't need to go through all the numbers there. T. Higgins is back as of this morning. Consensus ranking still did not have him ranked, so I don't have him ranked on here yet. But wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game this season. I just want to, in the 3 games that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins have played together, Higgins has got a 33% target share, Chase 29. Targets per route run, Higgins 29, Chase 23. Air yards, Higgins 43%, Chase 34. In zone targets, Higgins 33%, Chase 33%. These guys are basically 50-50 when they both play at the same time. So I like both these guys could potentially finish as wide receiver 1s this week. But again, T. Higgins first came back from injury. So, and I'm out on Mike Gesicki this week.
Okay, Los Angeles Chargers offense, 19th in scoring, 19th in rushing, 22nd in passing. Quarterback room, Justin Herbert, quarterback 7 on the week. Only had 18 pass attempts last week against the Titans, but he's been the quarterback 9 since week 7. Bengals allowed the 8th most passing yards, 6th most passing TDs, and 12th highest passing rate since week 5. So I like Herbert this week. Running back 21, J.K. Dobbins. Tough matchup with Cincinnati ranking 15th in rushing yards per game and 5th lowest explosion rate. I realize that he's going to tough start, but I get it if you have to start him. Gus Edwards, sit. Wide receiver room, Lad McConkey. I don't like him this week. Cincinnati's a top 10 defense against slot wide receivers. Wide receiver 38, Quentin Johnson. I do like him. He's got 3 wide receiver or better finishes this season. Tight end room, tight end 19, Will Disley. For me, is a sneaky start. He's got 5 end zone targets since week 5. Cincinnati is allied the 7th most receiving yards and 4th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. Game 13. Here we go, Coach. Houston Texans at your Dallas Cowboys 3-6. I got Texans 35, Dallas 17. Who do you have?
Can I just say something, man? Close the curtains, Jerry. Can we just close the curtains? Right? It just feels like Dallas is tanking for a top 5 pick. Every time I get Ashton Johnson out of Boise State, hey, I love it, but I'm not taking a running back in a top 5 pick. But he's a special talent. I get it. I've got Houston 31, Dallas 17. I don't think this game's close, and that's saying Cowboys are going to score 17 is saying they're going to get a late touchdown.
Okay, here we go. Houston's offense, 17th in scoring, 18th in rushing, 15th in passing. Who are we starting for Houston this week, Coach?
Well, you can almost start. It seems like anybody you want against this Dallas defense. They allow the 4th most fantasy points per game and 6th most passing touchdowns and 6th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud doesn't run the ball. Not worried about that. But C.J. Stroud's a start this week. He has not scored more than 12.4 points in 4 weeks and less than 14.5 in 6 out of 10 games. Dallas has a way of making quarterbacks look great. So C.J. Stroud's a start for me this week. Joe Mixon, the dude's RB2 in fantasy points per game this season at 20.8. He scored 16.6 points or more in 6 out of 7 games. You're starting Joe Mixon against the worst run defense in the NFL. And then wide receiver rooms, Nico Collins is back. Nico Collins was on an absolute tear for the season before he got hurt. He's averaging 21.3 fantasy points per game. That's good enough for second, a wide receiver 2 on the season. He was the wide receiver 2 behind only Malik Neighbors in PPR scoring before the injury, so he's in your lineups. Tank Dell, I don't love this week. I don't hate him. He's a wide receiver 3 flex play. And then I think this game gets out of hand. They rely on the run game. I don't know that Tank Dell is the guy that I am high on this week, but I think he gives you enough to be a wide receiver 3 flex play. Then Dalton Schultz, he's done nothing this year. He's tight end 27 at 6 points, and that's PPR points. Not a single game in double digits this season. I get it. He's returning to Dallas. It's a we want to call it a revenge game. Look, he's been gone for 2 years now, so I think we're past that. So I'm out on Dalton Schultz.
All right, Dallas, we got to get through these quick. Dallas's offense, 23rd in scoring, 31st in rushing, 10th in passing. The only guy that I would think about starting now, of course, we've had questions about Jake Ferguson. In fact, we have one now. But the only guy, you got CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 18, but he only had 21 yards receiving last week with Rush and Lance at quarterback. And then he showed up on the injury report yesterday. So I don't feel comfortable. We're not playing anybody. If you play tight end Jake Ferguson, Houston's allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points per game and fewest receiving yards to tight end. So I'm not comfortable starting anybody for that Dallas offense this week. Dollar Bill, he's got a question. He wants to know Caleb or A-Rich or Ferguson and Knox. For me, it's A-Rich and Knox. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that would start A-Rich over, but Caleb Williams is one of them. So I would go A-Rich as well. And then Ferguson or Knox, we like Knox. I think we've already talked about that. So love the question,
Coach,
man.
We got through 14 games or however many games and however many questions we got to, and you get to get off the air before 12:30. Right. So you're not going to get any trouble with the wife. Appreciate you. Appreciate you guys all who tuned in. Without you, it's just Coach and I talking to each other.
Appreciate you too, man. The wife just gave me the old NBA 2 minutes. So she knows. She's keeping track of time. So
all right.
Appreciate all you guys for tuning in, man.
Hey, thank you so much, everyone. Good luck today, Coach.
See you guys. You too.